Hello, and a massive hello to everybody. How we all doing? Rocking and rolling in a free world. This is 50 pips. Here we go. 19th of April, 2017. No trade calls, no recommendations, or response for their own stuff. We're here for educational purpose only. So what's going on, guys? How's sound? Everybody good? Good to see a bunch of usual suspects in here. Let's get this party started. So yeah, hey, Mayafra in the house. Good stuff. Been a long time. Hey Nick, how's it going? So let's see what's going on. Trying to go quickly because we have, I have a lot of stuff to do today, a lot of trading. So if anybody has anything they desperately want to look at, or anything any question they have, just put it in the Q&A. I'll try and tackle it. If not, we'll go through what we think is a little bit the most interesting things going on and try to update the view we had on Sunday. Okay, so what we said on Sunday, we're expecting volatility to pick up, and as we closed here last week, we thought that, hey man, how's it going? We'd expected that it would be normal, it would be healthy to see some kind of a retracement to then move back higher, right? So what we're getting a nice little retracement. Wouldn't be surprised to see this come all the way back down into the 12-13s, and then we expect this kind of action, with the caveat that sooner or later we expect this kind of action where, as we say jokingly, but only half jokingly, a lot of people are going to be coiled up in the fetal position below their desk saying, hey, what happened? I thought volatility didn't move. Well, guess what? Stuff happens. But again, so this is pretty much in line with what we're saying. And apart from that, all the bigger picture, a lot of the trades are in play, right? The bigger rotations, we got a lot of a nice little move on Goldman Sachs yesterday, and essentially, in case anybody's forgotten, this is one of our favorite, lazy trades here, right? And that's basically on the financials, right? And if you go back on a weekly, actually, I think we have to go back on a monthly. These are one of those set and forget trades we liked, and basically, let's see if this will load, right? Whereas all this area here, very nice, about 1.5 risk for about 23% reward if we completely unwind this move, which is our base case scenario. So these trades are all in play, right? And what we've been highlighting, and what we've been talking about is, the weakness in the equity markets, or the fact that the equity markets around the world were starting to look heavier and heavier and heavier, right? So we've got DAX trades in play here, which are playing, and they're all pretty much trades for a move back into the 200 moving average, right? Let's see if this can load. I don't know why it looks like this the platform's a bit slow, but right, we had this base case here on all these DAX trades, again just over 1% risk, very nice little trades. And our base case was that this was heavy and we're coming back into the 50. That's pretty much done. Then we've got the 100, then we got the 200. So all these rotations are in play, right? And also, Nikkei, very interesting. We've been stalking this one for a long time, right? And we actually managed to break down, and very, very heavy, right? And this is trying to make its way back to the 200. Now, one thing which people who follow know, and have been hearing us beat the drum about, is that these slow grind higher on the equity, right? These slow chops higher, this grinding at highs. We always talk about, taking the stairs up and the elevator down, and that do not be surprised with the velocity of move, especially when these give up, when there's everybody who needs to buy has bought and there are no bids, right? And probably, one of the very nice examples of that is the action on the FTSE yesterday, right? And basically, I think here, maybe, I don't know how many people have noticed, but as we hover at highs, yesterday we got a pretty nice little move. Now, just to give you an idea, yesterday we are exactly back, pretty much year lows. We're pretty much trading back, October, November 2016. Just let that sink in. 2016, right? One day. That's what you call velocity of move when there are no bids, where it's starting to get a little panic. So again, and this, of course, GPB related, but don't be surprised. The same way you get this kind of action, don't see don't be surprised you get that VIX ripping higher. Don't be surprised if one day there are no bids and you see the ES puking lower, right? Stuff happens, stuff happens. And again, it's just the velocity is increasing as the market is hitting air pockets, right? Now, so all that view on the U.S. equities still remains the same. Nothing much has changed. I think what a lot of people are interested in, what does that mean for the currency markets, right? Well, for the currency markets, if we look at DXY, this hasn't changed much for us, right? So remember, our play was short here for a move back into the 100. The 100 is going to be pivotal, right? But globally speaking, we're still consolidating here. So our base case is still that we're going to come and tag this 200. So that's in play. The move's in play. And then here, what would be healthy would be to see a little bounce. No matter whether, you can be bearish, but the healthy move here is to see this dollar weaken a little bit more and then to see some kind of bounce. Now, is that going to be a bounce for a move for it to stay in here and ultimately break out? Is it going to be crazy bounce? Is it going to be a little bounce back into the 100 where the 100 gets sold? We don't know, right? We just know what the levels are and how the market is likely going to try and react. But here it does look like it's going to take it's trying to take a good stab at moving back and tagging this 200. So we don't change our base case, but we understand that as we approach here, it would be healthy to see some kind of a bounce, and then it will still be, guess what, back at the 100. It will be pivotal for the pop higher or the break lower. And surprise, surprise, what we've been saying is that's why we feel a lot of people being caught off guard is if you can go back all the way to, December last year, November last year, and where are we? We're pretty much exactly where we were. That's why sometimes a lot of people don't get or find it hard to grasp what we're saying is not a lot's happening. Of course, there's possibility to make money, to lose money here, but in terms of the bigger picture, not a lot has changed. We're still hugging this 100 level, and unless we get clarity on rates, unless we get clarity on geopolitical, except most likely we'll keep on chopping around this. So the charts have been fairly pure. You can't really complain in terms of the action here. Okay. So what's happening on GPB in general? Now, again, these are short updates. I could spend an hour talking about cable or Euro GPB. So again, here I think a couple of interesting things. If you look at Euro GPB, so first of all, we'll have to see what happens in Parliament with the snap elections, etc. As far as we're concerned, what happened yesterday? And again, so let me backtrack. So what's going on here? So yesterday we got the news of the election out, and we got a lot of shorts covering on GPB. Okay, so now the fight is essentially between those who believe that what happened yesterday. So the fact that we're going to get snap election means that it's going to be a little bit more controlled. They're going to have more power to do what they have to do effectively. It's not going to be such a hardcore Brexit, et cetera, et cetera. So cover your shorts, right? And there's another part of the gang who's going to think, well, it doesn't matter whether you get snap elections or not. We're still going to go through a period which is going to be very tricky. It's going to be very long. We're going to have a lot of chop, and ultimately it's not going to bode great for the UK. They probably prefer a slightly lower pound. And again, there's so much uncertainty that clearly it's not bullish GPB. So take your pick, flip a coin. Both ways of looking at things, I think, make 100% sense, because you can argue that things are going to be a little bit more controlled, etc. You can argue that it's still a mess. We're not in the business of trying to discuss that. But here, our base case, because always we like to look at both sides of the coin, but then I want to give you what we're looking at, is that ultimately what happened yesterday hasn't really changed, the outlook. So if you're looking at something like Euro GPB here, I was having the discussion with somebody else. If I had to say where is the next 4% or 5% move coming, we'd expect the next 5% from here to come to the upside, not to the downside. Okay, know plenty of people who'll be looking for this to come all the way back down into the 78, so this area makes sense. But you know, again, we feel we're more sided on the other camp. Okay, if you look at this on the Euro GBP, so if you look at this on a daily, let's try and flip over on the daily if this will load. What's happening here? So we got this peak. Now, I think what is really interesting here is what happened yesterday towards the end of the day. So as far as we're concerned, the most likely all the books got cleared yesterday, right? Or the majority of the books got cleared yesterday, and we had a final puke towards the end of the day, right? When you get on a day, when you get such a big puke, right, lower, and then you get this kind of spike, this is likely the last puke, and the books are being cleared. So if anything, even with a gun to our heads, we would never be getting short into this kind of spike. In anything, we're covering shorts or we're tactically getting long into this, not the other way around. Okay, so it's the same thing for cable. So we'd expect to see some kind of a pause here, a little bit of a move higher, a little bit of a drift higher here. Okay, so that was in terms of the shorter term action to give you a little bit more of what we're looking at there. But does anybody else have a slow trading view today? It looks like it's taken some time to load. For some reason, it's not loading these. Come on, work with us, work with us, work with us. Okay, there you go. So here, we still have to, we still expect that ultimately, right now, we might get a little move right back into that whole cluster of moving averages. Back into those moving averages before we actually resolve a little bit. But this is clearly a support that needs to be respected. I mean, it doesn't mean it can't go lower, and it doesn't mean it's going to be very, very choppy, but it looks like the bigger stops were cleared, and now we're back in this pocket of support, which is likely going to try and hold. Okay. In terms of cable, which most people are looking at, or more people are going to be looking at here, what's happening here? Well, again, we posted this chart yesterday, actually before the announcement. You know what we said. You know, above this 126, we expected these 128s to come into play. Of course, we never knew that was coming up. We didn't expect that velocity of the move, but here we're stuck. So here, what's happening is markets just move through some levels with velocity, but the levels are still the same. So, you know, and I think everybody will be looking at it pretty much the same way, is that as long as we hold above the 128, there's a chance of this continuing to squeeze higher, right? Where could it squeeze to? Well, there'll be different ways of looking at it. So I assume you'll have, you'll have people looking at it in terms of this trend line, this stop. You'll have people looking at it in terms of this kind of box, right? There'll be a lot of different ways to look at this. I think ultimately, as long as we hold above the 128, you've got a potential air pocket here, right? And if we start to move down, you'll probably see a lot of support coming back into that whole base that was built into the 124, right? So that's pretty much the chop range, and it looks like there's still more air pockets or risk to the upside than the downside. I think ultimately it's not something you want to trade tight. I think it's something you want to be careful, especially if you're not on a good broker. You can get a lot of slippage. You're trading on a lot of headline risks. So, but again, I think the point is that whether you're looking at it technically or whether you're looking at it fundamentally, you can still make a fairly good case for this to ultimately come back and puke, and a fairly good case for this to try and squeeze up into the 134s, right? Ultimately, to take a side, because it wouldn't be fun if you don't take a side, we'd still look at this as any rally or any area here is still an interesting play to try and build some kind of short exposure for ultimately to see another test lower, right? We feel there's unresolved business further down. but the problem is it's a tricky one because there's likely a lot of air pockets here, right? That's the big problem with the trade. So I would say that this is really not the ideal chart for gunslingers or high levered players, right? You can easily get in trouble. And again, remember, it doesn't mean you don't have to trade it, right? You know, don't say, oh, I only trade cable. That's just limiting yourself, limiting your possibilities. You should trade chart patterns. You should trade risk reward. You should trade opportunities. But whatever chart those present themselves on shouldn't matter to you, really. That's the way we look at it. But again, it's going to be interesting, and there could be some, you know, interesting developments here. The other chart which we're particularly interested in is crude. So no surprise, people been following. We're actually, you know, full disclosure, I should be fairly clear, we're short crude. We're looking for a bigger retracement here. I think you have to be careful and see what, you know, you got a lot of support coming in this whole area, right? So this is going to be, you know, pretty much the 152s. This is going to be an interesting nut to crack, especially to the downside. You get some bouncy action here or see a puke back down into the 49s here. But we'd still suspect, unless it's on some crazy data or something, rallies to still ultimately get sold and see a little bit of a move down, right? In terms of bonds, you know, the trade that keeps on giving, right? We still think, again, we're not going to change our tune. We've been talking about this since, you know, pretty much since the beginning of the year. We expect 160s to print before, you know, we see 130s or 140s, right? And this is still rotating higher, quite interesting action. So again, you know, really can't complain too much on the charts. In terms of yen, we said we expected to see a lot of velocity of move inside range, and you know, we would not be interested unless we got to the extreme. So all of a sudden now we're getting interested in yen. You know, could there be an interesting possibility to play for a little bounce, especially if you get that USD weakness finishing into that 200 and then it's bounce time? You know, we'll have to wait and see. But again, I think we can't really complain with the charts. It's been fairly interesting action, right? Yeah, again, I think a lot of people, again, I'm going to might get some flack here. A lot of newer traders love to trade GPB, JPY, GPB, CHF, GPB, CAD because they move a lot. Just remember, they move a lot both ways, so you can make money quick, but you can lose money quick. We're not huge fans of trading those. We much prefer to stick with the higher liquidity pairs. We don't focus on those that much, right? But it's the same trade across the board. Remember that. Guys, let's do another couple of minutes. Any chart I missed? Anything anybody really wants to look at? Anything anybody wants to focus on? Yeah, sure. Intraday, sure. Let's do that. Intraday on Kiwi. Kiwi's. Let's see if this will load. Okay, here we go. Kiwi, you know, we talked about this. We were long this for that bounce back into those moving averages. And here, intraday, I think it's an interesting little short, right? Tight, but in an interesting little short. If you look at it on the 1 hour, and again, I think it's more of a scalp than anything else for now. We'll have to see if it gets any traction. But where is it? Let's get back on the 1 hour chart. Let's see if it will load. So you see what's happening here, right? We got this move right back through yesterday's highs, essentially, right? And we got this little failure. So I think this was an interesting little opportunity, especially if you're around earlier on, to play this to the downside, to play a little correction. And, you know, whether that correction is just a little move back and everything's going to stay in trend and will ultimately play higher, I think that was the interesting trade. Now here, if anything, you need to take some off, right? And then I think you can hold the runner. You know, you can hold the runner, see if you get a little bit of a more correction. But ultimately, you know, if this if equities start to continue to hold heavy, etc., as we said, we expect to see a little bit more dollar weakness. So we'd consider this as, you know, whether it's a possible scalp to the downside, but we'd consider the majority of the scalp to be done, and ultimately this to try and take another little leg higher, right? Again, I'm not going to look at the funny pairs because there's too few people look at them, right? Aussie, again, it's a little bit choppy here. Again, keep in mind you've also got Trump on the wires, but it's just stuck here in the dailies. You know, we had that those highs keep on getting sold. It's not particularly interesting here. You've got CAD. What's going on CAD? So we kept on talking about this. Actually, got a lot of hate mail on this one. You know, every time we came back in, everybody said, this is going to die, this is going to die. We said, you got to respect those moving averages, right? You don't, if anything, you get long into those moving averages, you don't get short, right? So here we've got a nice little bounce. You'll have to see how it reacts here, but clearly, especially on what's coming out of the White House, etc., and depending on what happens on crude, you clearly have potential, right? To the downside, the support continues to be all those moving averages, but if we break higher here, you know, likely air pocket all the way back into these highs, back towards the 136, right? That's what looks to be the most interesting trade. And again, on USD CHF, still looking for a little bit more downside. Okay, guys. Hope this was interesting. I'll post the recording. As always, guys, thank you so much for all the support. It's really appreciated. It makes everything so much more fun. Again, thanks for the likes. Thanks for the shares. Thanks for the retweets. Have an awesome day. And again, happy I'm able to keep this up as long as I can on these Wednesday mornings. Have a great one. Hope it was useful for you. Bye, guys.